Hey YouTube, what's up? Especially Kana here. Thanks for tuning into my video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I've been saying for like the last few months that I wanted to make a video kind of describing my experience in real estate school and becoming a licensed real estate agent. I know these videos were very helpful to me when I was making the decision to get into real estate. So I wanted to make my own video. I'm going to briefly talk about school. I'm going to talk about my final exam that you have to take once you finish school to sit for the licensing exam. And then I'm going to talk about some tips and tricks, resources that I use to help me pass the exam. So if you're interested in that kind of content, go ahead and stay tuned. All right, so once again, this video was going to be briefly talking about my experience becoming a licensed real estate agent. So sometime last March, I kind of started getting the feeling out of nowhere that I wanted to become a real estate agent. Now, I do have a full-time job, and I still have a full-time job, but it's always kind of been a desire of mine to become a real estate agent. So I started doing my research online. I started looking into different schools, and I finally pinpointed a school that really stood out to me. The expenses were not high at all, and I decided to go for it. So I signed up, and I enrolled into the school, and I took the class for 8 weeks. And my experience was a pretty good experience. The class itself was $600. The textbook that you have to actually purchase to take the course was $150. So my total expenses was $750, which is not bad at all. Again, the course was for 8 weeks. I went to school 2 days a week, and the classes were about 3.5 hours, if I'm not mistaken. My teacher, or my instructor, was very well versed in real estate. He's got a career that spans over 2 decades, and he's been, a realtor. He's been a realtor. He's been a realtor. He has worked on the appraisal side of things. He's an instructor, obviously, and then he's also sat on different boards. So I think that his wealth of experience and knowledge really contributed to his ability to teach the class, and for me to understand. He really applied a lot of real life scenarios and experiences to the teaching, which was helpful. The class itself, as far as the content, it can be it's a lot. Okay, you're learning a lot in a short period of time. So you have to make sure that you're on your game, you're paying attention in class. It was online. You also want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence outside of class time. So you're spending the time in the textbook reading. And it is a lot of reading, okay? It is a lot of reading. So just be prepared for that. Some chapters are like 38 pages. And I personally, I like to read. I'm a bookworm. But even I can say that it's a lot of reading. And you can't just blindly read. Sometimes you'll blindly read something to get done with it. This is information that you have to understand. So you can't just blindly read it. You have to read it to understand. And when you're reading to understand, it takes a little bit longer. But the class itself, once again, I think that because my instructor was so well-versed and so experienced, I think it made the class better and easier for me to understand. My favorite part of the class was not the exams, obviously. It wasn't the tests. It wasn't even really the reading. It was really the case studies. So that was one of my favorite parts of the class. Finally, after the 8 weeks was coming to an end, you do have to sit for a final exam. I think I had to pass with a 75% or better. I did pass with over 75%. I cannot remember how much it was. But once you pass your final exam, you are eligible to then sit for your state licensing exam for state and national. So what I did was I decided to immediately after passing my final, I said I'm going to take about 2 weeks off. And then after those 2 weeks, I'll come back to studying, and then I'll study for a period of time, and then I'll schedule my exam. Well, what ended up happening was after those 2 weeks passed, I kind of was getting a little bit lazy. Like I was, like I said, I have a full-time job. I had went really hard with my with school, with real estate. I passed the class. I passed the final exam, and I was just kind of tired. So rather than getting right back to studying in 2 weeks so I can sit for the exam, I kind of just let it go. And before I knew it, like 5 weeks had passed, and I'm like, wait a minute, no, this is not going to work. I need to go ahead and start studying. But for some reason, again, I just couldn't get to it. So what I did was I played a trick on myself, if you will. And I tricked myself by when I just said, you know what, I'm going to pick a date and schedule my exam, and that's going to force me to start studying. So what I did was I picked a date, and the date happened to be 19 days from that day. So I had 19 days to prepare for the exam. So this next part of the video, I want to get into the resources I use to prepare for the exam. So one of the main resources you're going to use when you're preparing for the exam is obviously it's going to be your textbook from the class, okay? This is my textbook from the class. Again, this bad boy was $150, and it has obviously a wealth of information in it. It's got a glossary, and it's going to be a great resource, okay? But I had to keep it real. you cannot only use your textbook from class as a resource. You just can't. You have to dip into multiple resources. It doesn't have to be 4 or 5 or 6. It may not even have to be 3, but you definitely want to do your research and find out what materials are out there that are best for you. Everyone learns differently, and every piece of content doesn't work for everyone. So the other resources outside of my textbook was a channel on YouTube called Prep Agent. If you're watching this video, you maybe have come across Prep Agent's channel before. If you haven't, I'm going to just plug you right now. Go check out their channel and subscribe, but just wait till you get done watching my video first. But please check out Prep Agent. Prep Agent has a wealth of knowledgeable people running the channel. But obviously just so much content. There's like there's like so many videos, and there's not a topic that you will not be able to come across on that video. They do a lot of interactive videos. They've got, just like I said, videos on every single topic. I really love their vocabulary videos. Vocabulary will be the foundation for you. You want to make sure you know your vocabulary. If you know your vocabulary, you are set, as far as you have a good chance of passing the exam. Once again, the vocabulary is the foundation. Okay, so that's the second resource. So my textbook, Prep Agent on YouTube. And then the third resource was PSI. Now, PSI, there is a fee to use PSI. Prep Agent is free, obviously, because it's on YouTube. You're obviously going to pay for your book. But PSI, let me see here. Just go up here real quick. So PSI is really cool. So PSI, there's options to take practice exams. There's options to go over vocabulary. There's Q&As. There's just so very much. So what I did was I used PSI to take practice exams. I took those exams over and over and over and over and over. When I started to pass those exams with a 75% or better each time, I started to feel more confident. And then eventually I started scoring in the 90s. And then eventually I would start scoring 100s. And I just kept taking those exams over and over and over. And then I also used their vocabulary resource. It was just so neat. There's so many vocabulary words. So there's a bucket for that, or a module for that on there. And then there is, like I said, the Q&A. There's going to be lots of just to practice questions. Not practice exams, but practice questions. So that's also another thing. It's really cool. So I can't remember exactly how much it cost me to use that resource, but it was a really good resource. It really was. I'm going to check something real quick. I'm sorry. I want to make sure I'm telling y'all everything that you need to know. Sorry. Okay. So yeah, make sure you do your due diligence once again, finding out the best resources for you. I found that those 3 resources helped me tremendously. And I mean, when I tell y'all, I was sleeping, and everything. It was all, I breathed the material. All I did was study. I just study. I also had a vacation coming up the day, or a trip rather, coming up the day after the exam. I was going to be traveling to Houston with a friend to attend the Lil Baby and Chris Brown concert. And so that was also another motivator, and also some more pressure. Girl, you better pass this exam, because there's no way you're going to enjoy yourself at this concert, or yourself period, in Houston if you don't pass this exam. So the concert was actually going to be the next day after I took the exam. So anyways, the morning of the exam, I actually had a hair appointment at 6 a.m. So I woke up that morning really early. I prayed. I started listening to Prep Agent videos, and I was also flipping through my textbook. I took a practice exam that morning, and I think I scored like a 90 something. And I went to my hair appointment. On my way there, I was listening to the videos. When I got to the parking lot, I was listening to the videos. When she started doing my hair, I was listening to the videos with my AirPods. She finished my hair, and then I had to skirt over to the testing site, which was 45 minutes away from home. And on that 45-minute drive, I just listened to the videos. I was just in the mode. When I pulled up to the testing site, I got out of the car. I walked in. There were about 4 or 5 other test takers, one of which was someone who had taken the exam 5 times, no lie. And he kind of really soured the mood at the table for all of us test takers, because we were all first-time test takers, and he just was talking about how difficult the exam was. And again, that's not the first thing you want to hear when you're sitting for the exam. I'm like, well, go somewhere. No, but he was just saying it's so challenging, and I really wish I could have talk to him after I took my exam to see, did you pass? I really wanted to know if he passed, because that kind of due diligence, man, shout out to that guy. And I really hope that he passed. Never, ever, ever give up. I mean, if you have to take the exam more than once, you have to take the exam more than once. There's no shame in that. So anyways, when we arrived on site, I was led to my own individual computer. They give you a pen and a paper. That's all you can take. You cannot take your phone, obviously. And I started the exam shortly after 9 a.m. And I'm going to tell y'all, when I first got my first few questions, it was like I was looking at hieroglyphics, however you say that word. It was so like, what am I looking at? This is not even familiar. But then I just took a moment. I said, you know what? You're not about to mess this test up. I remember a test taking tip that I've heard before, but I've also heard it on Prep Agent. When you have multiple choice, never select an answer that you've never seen. Okay, like if you've never seen the vocabulary word, the concept, the terminology being used, don't select that answer. That a lot of people trip up on that. They might say, well, dang, I've never seen this word or this concept before. This must be the answer. Don't do that. But I think you have a great chance of passing if, like I said, you really get your vocabulary down pat. That is the foundation. So you do take, I did sign up to take both the national and the state. So as soon as the national ended, the state popped up, went right into that test. I was like, oh my God, this is so much. But I just kept going through. I would take my time. There's a calculator also on the computer that you can use. Obviously, you can use pen and paper. And so I was using that to get the math problems. I'm not good at math. I'm just going to keep it real. Math has always been somewhat challenging for me, but I studied like crazy. I put that time in. So I did have that assurance that, you know, you studied this. Finally, when I got to the last question, I hit the next page to proceed, and I was so nervous. I was like, oh my God, I hope I pass this exam. Well, the next screen popped up, and I saw a national pass, state pass, and I was just like, yes, I was so happy. Like, I was just so happy. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, I just immediately, thank you, God. I was so happy, because that exam was difficult. Like, I started it a little after 9. It was after 12 when I answered the last question. Like, I was so scared that I was not going to pass the exam. The questions, like I said, they're not going to look exactly like the questions you took on any practice exam, no matter what the resource is, because it's not going to be the same exact questions. But it's the concepts and it's the vocabulary. So don't trip yourself up on that, because I initially was getting tripped up on that. You know, I've taken so many practice exams. You know, I'm halfway going into the test expecting to see those same questions. Don't do that, okay? But remember, it's the concepts, it's the vocabulary, okay? That's the foundation. So when I saw that pass, it doesn't tell you what your score is. It doesn't tell you, you know, what sections you scored bad in or what sections you scored good in. It just tells you whether or not you passed. And again, I took my test in the state of Illinois. And I was so happy. I was celebrating. I was just so thrilled. I was thanking God. I was so happy. I knew I was going to have a good time in Houston the next day, baby. I had my hair done, and I was just on top of the world. So yeah. That is my experience with school. I hope I covered everything. I mainly want to talk about the resources that helped me pass on the first try. And I also wanted to just kind of talk about school a little bit. So I think I covered everything that I wanted to talk about. I do want to make a second video talking about after I passed the test, actually getting hooked up with a broker. Because you have to start working for a broker in order to apply for your license. So there's a whole experience after passing the licensing, national and state exams that you have to go through. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what that process looked like, the fees associated with it. I want to talk about how I selected my broker and things, and how real estate has been going for me since September when I became licensed. So if you're interested in seeing a video like that, let me know down in the comment section. I hope this video was helpful. Please let me know if it was. If you have questions that I did not cover in this video, let me know. And I guess I'll see you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye.